Hi, my name is John Stroman. I'm an Assistant Attorney General. I've served in this office through multiple administrations. Everything from some criminal trials to appeals before our South Dakota Supreme Court. But today I want to share with you one of the agencies that I served, and that is the Sex Offender Registry. The federal government had started putting together this view that there was a need to keep track and be aware of sex offenders, convicted sex offenders, and where they were, because they had, what the research was showing, a very high recidivism rate, which means a high likeliness to reoffend. And a lot of this came to fruition in 2006 with what was called the Adam Walsh Act. Some of you may recall John Walsh, who was the host of America's Most Wanted. And his son Adam was a victim, actually a murder victim. And he helped propel the bringing to of awareness, the need for these type of registries. The federal government then passed various legislation that resulted in what's called as the SORNA agency, which stands for Sex Offender Registry and Notification Act. And there they put together some rules and requirements for states to put together their own registry to keep track of the various sex offenders within their boundaries. At the time, South Dakota aggressively began pursuing fulfillment of the various requirements that needed to be and passing the laws that were necessary for qualification. Actually, South Dakota became the fourth state in the country to meet the requirements under SORNA of called substantial implementation. And since then, the office continues to work with, for example, tribal agencies, making sure that information is shared. We've put together joint powers agreements with them, all of us with the same concern of protecting the citizens, and especially our most vulnerable, our children, in our state. Right now we have 20 registrable crimes that can land a person on the sex offender registry, in addition to the attempts of those crimes. Almost all of them are classic, what you'd refer to as sex crimes. There are a couple exceptions. For example, kidnapping. If one commits a kidnapping of a minor, that can result with them on the sex offender registry. Also, if they commit first or second degree human trafficking, that can result on the sex offender registry. If it's an individual who moves from another state and comes to South Dakota, but they had the requirement to be registered for a sex crime where they came from, they're required to register here also. Same way if it's maybe a court-martial of a sex crime or a federal or tribal sex crime, if they move into the state of South Dakota, they will be required to register here. The history of that is our legislature wisely did not want South Dakota to become a vacuum for sex offenders, where an individual will go, well, I have to register in this state, but if I go to South Dakota, actually my technical crime may not fit there, and I'll just go there and then I won't have to register. They made a catch-all there to prevent that from happening. The South Dakota registry, like the federal registry, is composed of 3 tiers, but actually a lot of the similarities end there. For example, we have in our registry that if you're on it, you are basically on it for life, okay? But there are 2 tiers that you can get off. The first tier is there's a couple crimes that if those are the ones you committed, you can petition the court to get off the registry if you've been registered for a minimum of 5 years. There's a second tier where it's 25 years. If you've been on for 25 years and fulfilled certain requirements, you can be let off there. The third tier is everybody else, and you're on the registry for life. I think it's important to understand that neither the Attorney General or law enforcement or anybody else makes this decision whether an individual goes on or off the registry. It's a judicial determination. They come before a judge, the information is reviewed, there's a judicial determination that the individual is not a danger to society, to themselves. There's some requirements they must fulfill, and the judge decides whether or not they stay on. Also, I think it's important to understand that in our state we also have what's known as community safety zones, which means that a sex offender cannot live within 500 feet of pools, schools, public parks, for example. There are exceptions, okay? But it's important to realize it isn't that they cannot go within those safety zones, but they cannot live, they cannot reside within those areas. This is very powerful, okay? Because obviously what we're after is to be able to provide information to people so that they can be aware of the situation and watch out for their own safety. I think probably the biggest takeaway you can have today is if you visit the South Dakota Attorney General's Sex Offender Registry on the South Dakota Attorney General's website. There you are able to search within our state to see someone either by their name, maybe by a city, maybe by even your own specific neighborhood and address, to find out if there are registered sex offenders in that area and who they are, and important information to help you keep yourself and your family safe. So I'd strongly encourage you to go to our website and take a look at that. I think one of the unique things about the state of South Dakota with the Sex Offender Registry is right now, as of April 2019, we have 3,695 registered offenders. Other states have registry too, but there's also another number called the non-compliant number, which is very important. Non-compliant number means how many of those total registered offenders are out there that we don't know where they are. Maybe they've left the state, maybe they've come in and they're not registered, or they're just really not accounted for. As a result of some of the outstanding work of DCI, Division of Criminal Investigation, as well as other law enforcement and this office, the state of South Dakota has a 1.4% non-compliant rate. That's that's wonderful. Okay, so we're keeping track of these individuals. We're keeping an eye on them. And matter of fact, this was even recognized by the Justice Department this spring. They just completed their audit, the first one since 2010 of our state with reference to our statutes, the implementation of those statutes, and how we're doing as a state with the Sex Offender Registry. And let me read to you their summation of that from that report, that audit that took place. It said, South Dakota has performed an exceptional work in substantially implementing SORNA and enhancing its sex offender registry and notification system. I think it's important to recognize that, as I mentioned, South Dakota was the fourth state in the nation to receive implementation status. But even to this date, there's only 17 total states that have met that. So with that, I want to encourage you to visit the website, look into some of the great resources we have there, because all of us working together are concerned about our citizens and their safety, and especially the safety of our children. So with that, thank you for your time.